Hey everyone, so we are here today to see Spider-Man No Way Home, and I thought I'd do a review whether or not I have it with Pat, and everything just went dark a second ago because the light in the car decided to turn off. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to have necessarily Pat with me on this one, if we do it after or whatever, what we're doing. But yeah, I'll get his reaction too. I know he's been hiding from this movie. I've tried to stay away from reading anything. I've seen some things, but all I'm expecting is to see like nostalgia for the other ones, for the other Spider-Man movies, and to see them pop up and these bad guys pop up and people get excited about it. And I am like, I loved, Benedict Cumberbatch's version of Doctor Strange, and the fact that I get to see him in this movie makes me really excited. I also like Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man, so I'm just looking to have a good time. I don't know if these Marvel movies need to be 2.5 hours long. They're getting really tongue-in-cheek and long-winded, so we'll have to see what's going on when it comes to this movie, but hopefully it's a good time. That's all I'm expecting it to be. And we'll get everybody's reactions hopefully soon. All right, so we got Spider-Man fan here.
Yes, we do.
So what's your thoughts?
Spider-Man. What's my thoughts? I can't wait for this movie. I've been waiting for so long. Every time there was a trailer or a commercial, I was like a little kid. La 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 la. I didn't want to know anything. I only watched the teaser trailer. I already have an idea of some stuff that's going to happen. And I'm just looking for a really good movie with some good crossover stuff and something that's going to lead into the rest of the Marvel shit.
Oh, there we go.
Woo!
A chance to record with Pat at the end of everything because, it's pretty late. We're getting back from the movie. It's about midnight. But I wanted to go through and talk about Spider-Man No Way Home. I do a lot of these weird, not weird, but not necessarily horror reviews on this channel because these are also the movies that I really like. And this is a place on the YouTube channel where I can talk about these movies and kind of give you my opinions and thoughts. So first up, I'm going to say is there's going to probably be spoilers in this as I talk about things because it's really hard to not talk about certain points of the movie. I'm going to try to do my best to not do major spoilers, but I want to talk about things that I really liked, things that maybe could have been done a little better, and you just overall thoughts and opinions. So I want to get the ones that I didn't like out of the way because there's really not a whole lot. This is not going to be a surprise for anybody that kind of knows the way that I kind of think when it comes to a lot of these kind of superhero movies because honestly, I really do enjoy all the MCU stuff. Like there really hasn't been one that I've been like, oh, that's just terrible and I don't want to watch it. Now, if you're talking to me in the, the 90s and 2000s, early 2000s, yeah, there's a lot of really terrible, superhero movies that have come out. And if you're talking about the ones that don't have the fine tuning that the MCU movies do, then definitely you're going to see something that is not necessarily up to par with what I think that Marvel has done. So I have to give them props. One thing I will say is the runtime is a little bit too long. And I think that's just kind of a normal thing with Marvel movies nowadays is like they can't just do a good hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. They try to chalk as much stuff into it as humanly possible to hit that 2 hours and like 30-minute mark for every one of their movies nowadays. It's like they're doing an episode of the Terrible Terror podcast. They just can't shut up about themselves. And so they keep like milking these things. The only other thing that I was kind of like really miffed about was that Doctor Strange wasn't in enough. I think he was in it. He was in it quite a bit, but I wish I would have seen more. I wish I would have seen him actually kind of get involved at the end during the climactic fight with everything. Also, I wish that they had done something along the lines of calling this the Sinister Six, because we're really close to this being a Sinister Six movie, which it basically fucking is. And then the other thing is, if you've seen Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and you've seen the ending credits, there is something for you if you stay in the spoiler, like in the stingers, not the spoilers, but in the stinger area. It's the first one that pops up. but I would have liked to have seen Venom just randomly show up. Like, not just be this side thing, but actually show up in this world for a moment. Though they do set up the symbiote probably coming into the universe, which is very interesting to see the way that the MCU is going to handle this. And that way that keeps everything kind of separate, right? Because Mobius is coming up pretty soon, and that is going to be in the world of Venom. It's not necessarily going to be in the world of Spider-Man. So it makes me wonder, are we actually going to see a Spider-Man in the world of Venom and Mobius? I kind of hope we are, but who is it going to be? You know, it's not going to be your Tom Holland. It could be something else. And I also feel like this movie kind of sets up something very similar, so we'll have to see what happens later on. Now, when it comes to the good things or things I really like the runtime, like I said, it's very long. And there's a couple of little things where it kind of lulls a little bit in the movie, and it actually happens a lot when it's just MJ and, you know, Peter Parker and Ned. And I get why the things are there, but sometimes they're like, I like their stuff, but I just felt like we could have maybe done without it, but I get that the story is moving along with it. Also, it's weird that we have the same James Jonah Jameson as we did in the Tobey Maguire. So they're the exact same fucking person, and they're like the same, played by the same actor, right? That's really weird. Also with the spell. So the basic premise of Spider-Man No Way Home, and this is more of a gripe than anything else, and I'm sure it can be, you know, it can easily be solved, but you know, Spider-Man is well known after the end of Far From Home, right? Because Mysterio, he puts on, I keep on saying Mysterion, but that's South Park. But he basically put out a spell, or he put out the notice to James Jonah Jameson that he is Peter Parker. So everybody knows, and his life is turned upside down by the fact that he's Peter Parker, and everybody knows who he is, and he wants to make a spell so that everybody but the people in his life will forget that connection, you know, mixes together. And by doing that, he accidentally casts or makes the spell even harder than it should be, because Doctor Strange is really trying to help him, because Spider-Man helped save the world, you know, back in the day. Multiple times he's been involved with the Avengers. And so you have this, you know, spell gone awry, and everybody that knows Peter Parker is, if the spell goes all the way through, they're all going to come into the world because the spell's gotten so messed up. That's your basic premise. So it's him getting the now villains that have come from these other universes, and him having to gather them up all together to basically put everything back the way that it should be, which will also, I think, make it so that everybody forgets him once again. So with that spell, like, the question becomes with it, like, there's got to be print media and there's got to be like electronic media that's out there that explains what is going on. But they could say, oh, Spider-Man's Peter Parker. I get it, and nobody knows who Peter Parker is. Okay, well, who the hell's Peter Parker? I don't get it. So, okay, Spider-Man's Peter Parker. Big deal. Who the fuck is Peter Parker? I get that. I get that that's part of the thing. But you'd still have to know, when he starts introducing himself to everybody as Peter Parker, that people are ultimately going to know that it's Peter Parker. Oh, you're Spider-Man because you're the only Peter Parker that I know. Or is there like 75 different fucking Peter Parkers out there that they're going to basically say, oh, well, that could be Spider-Man, or that could be Spider-Man. Like, is there, you know, a fat Mexican Peter Parker out there? I'm saying that because that could be me. You never know. And he happens to be Spider-Man, but no, Spider-Man's thin. Like, you don't know what Spider-Man is. And it kind of leads the way for, you know, the introduction of Miles Morales and other Spider-Mans that are out there. And there is a great quip by Jamie Foxx at one point. He's like, man, you're from Queens, and I definitely thought that you were black. And he says, there's got to be a black Spider-Man out there. Like, there's all these cool little things that are in the movie that are really exciting, and kind of like seeing where things could go. So that's kind of like the gripes. It's not a whole lot, because honestly, with the runtime of this movie at being 2 hours and 30 minutes, I didn't feel it at all, and I was completely enthralled. Now, if you know my experience with the Eternals, which I don't think I ended up putting into a review, not the Eternals, I'm sorry, with Shang-Chi, the reason I didn't do a review on Shang-Chi was because we saw it at like 10 at night, and when we went and saw it, we were all so tired that both like Patrick and I kind of started falling asleep during it, and it was during the lull of the movie. Like, Shang-Chi started off so fucking on fire, and then it hits the middle and it just slows to a halt. And then when it tries to pick itself back up again, I feel like it's too late, but I have to give it a second chance just because the downtime really wore me out in the movie when I was already tired, and the movie is 2.5 hours long. So it makes it really hard to get to that area. But I'm not saying Shang-Chi is a bad movie. In fact, out of these last three Marvel movies, it would be my number two, right? With the Eternals on the bottom, which I really enjoyed, and I enjoyed primarily because I really enjoyed Kumail Nanjiani's performance in the movie, not just because I'm a Kumail Nanjiani stan and I've been following him for a fucking long ass time, but because I felt like the story was just a little bit too much. So I would rank Spider-Man, No Way Home, and then Shang-Chi, and then the Eternals. That was way too like long in the tooth, as some people would say. So getting back to Spider-Man, so the runtime is really good, like for the feeling of it. It again could be shorter. They could have cut some stuff out of it, but in general, it could have, it even if it went longer, I probably wouldn't have felt it. The final stinger is fucking awesome because it's more of what I want to see. And honestly, after watching so many of these Marvel films, Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange is my favorite MCU character. I didn't think that he was going to do a good job. I saw the trailers for it. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to go see Doctor Strange. Don't know a whole lot about him. Let's just go see it. I fell in love with the movie so hard that it is possibly keeps moving up to the top of my favorite MCU movie, period. And it's because of Benedict Cumberbatch, and wherever he shows up in any of these movies, I'm fucking excited. And so the last stinger is basically the trailer for Doctor Strange 2, which I'm just so excited of. The Multiverse of Madness, Sam Raimi coming back to directing a movie like this. It's weird because like there's people behind me, and there's a Shug McGrath, I think, or Shug McGrath, or whatever its name is. The thing that shows up in the What if you watch the What If series, like there's multiple versions of that creature. That was a What If thing too, and it shows up in this. And that's really cool. And the guys behind us were like, well, that can't be that because I think it's a different one because it's not the same color. But who knows? Who cares? I get to see one of those things on screen in a fucking Marvel movie. I'm so fucking excited. And I even went out loud. I'm like, oh my God, like that's there. I'm, an old man talking about these movies like they're just, I'm so excited to see them, which I am. And I'll always be excited to see something along these lines, something that's been from my childhood that I've seen in things, whether it be video games or comics or whatever it is. Always be excited when I finally get to see like a big screen realization of it, and whether or not it's going to be important to everything, who knows. But I really enjoyed that like trailer basically. So pretty soon, if you haven't seen this, you'll see the trailer that's out there. In the beginning, when I first, when you first watch the video, you see my stuff in the car. I talked about how I just wanted this to be just a good movie, and it's a really good movie. It's very, very entertaining. You have a lot of there's a lot of hidden Easter eggs in it, from like when you see with with Electro, and he powers up his suit, and then he gets like the crown that he has in the comics. It's really cool to see things like that. The other thing I really like, Tom Holland is, of course, he's been great as Spider-Man. I think this is his best performance. And it's really like the growing up of Spider-Man. That's the way I feel like this movie is. This movie is the Spider-Man franchise growing up and kind of coming in line with what Spider-Man has been. I get the way that they ended everything. I just like, I don't know if they could have gone a different direction with it and tried to do something different instead of going with where they went. And I kind of saw it coming. I'm like, okay, well, this is going to make sense. The fight with Doctor Strange is my favorite fucking part of this movie. And not just because it's Doctor Strange, but they go back to that whole thing with the mirror world and everything going its way and the kaleidoscope of things. And even though Benedict Cumberbatch looks a little stiff doing this stuff, and I get it, it's magic and it's that type of thing. It's hard to put that on screen sometimes and do it in the right way where it's good for everybody. But the whole background, and when Spider-Man gets disassociated from his body and what happens afterwards, it's just all a cool feeling, like them going back and forth and being a cat and mouse game between them, even though, Peter Parker at the time doesn't understand what's going on, and Doctor Strange being so full of himself that, oh, this is why I brought you, because I'm the only one that can control shit in here. And, it's just fun. There is like one downer thing that happens in the movie, but I just, like, honestly, I didn't feel much for it because I don't think that the character has shown up as much. Like, they try to make it this big thing, and I get it. It is a big thing, but honestly, I've seen, other characters that we spent more time with have passed away in these series. Of course, the big one is, but the fact that I just feel like there's not enough to be like, oh, well, I have to be invested in this character, and this is the way I need to go, but I just didn't feel it, right? But I like that they went there at the same time, right? I'm saying it's a bad thing, and it's not a thing I'm disappointed in. It's just that I knew that they were going to do something like this eventually, because eventually this all happens, and it's a way for them to connect kind of all the Spider-Man together. All the Spider-Man being in the movie was fantastic. I've always said that Tobey Maguire is a good Peter Parker. I always thought he was a bad Spider-Man, and that's why I never liked the first one. I don't really like the third one, but I really like the second one because I like Alfred Molina, and I feel like the relationship that they have in it, and they really did a good job of the relationship of Doc Ock and Spider-Man in that movie. And so that's where, like, as Peter Parker relating to Doc Ock, I really love Tobey Maguire. But he's just not, Spider-Man's not the quippy Spider-Man. Spider-Man's not the jokester, sarcastic guy, all this stuff. He's just not there. And then you have Andrew Garfield, who I've always heard is a much better Spider-Man than he is Peter Parker. Now, I will come clean and say I've never seen the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Just never really found the time to go see them. Nobody really wanted to. I wasn't seeing a lot of movies with Patrick and everybody else, so I never went and saw them, even though I was kind of interested in going to see them. But also Spider-Man 3 kind of left a bad taste in my mouth to do a whole new Spider-Man series. I like that he got his limelight. I like that he got, like, big parts in it. Tobey Maguire got some good things in it too, but he get the Tobey Maguire face for the whole thing, which, I'm kind of like, oh, okay, but it's fine for what it is. But I really feel like Andrew Garfield got the better, the better edge of the sword for this one. Like, they definitely mentioned some things that and to say I haven't seen them, it's not that I don't know about them, because I've watched videos about them and people complaining about them and people how they like them, to kind of see, well, should I watch these? Me seeing him in this makes me want to watch those two. Like, it really does. And I really think that the way they introduced both of them was perfect, and the way that they're dressed at the moment is perfect if you kind of think about what I'm saying with how the Spider-Mans are viewed, right? Tom Holland, honestly, is the full package, because he's got the awkwardness of Peter Parker, and then he's got the really quip stuff that he does with the bad guys, and I think it fits Spider-Man so much well. I think it's better written Spider-Man, and I think Tom Holland can do that role very, very well, which is one of the reasons why I'm actually looking forward to Uncharted, because I feel like that's Nathan Drake too. You have the villains in the movie are also very well done. Willem Dafoe can do no fucking wrong as fucking Norman Osborn. Honestly, he was the best part of the first Spider-Man, besides the fucking costume, and we'll talk less about that than we have to. Everybody naturally got a different costume without having to go through a lot of bullshit, right? It wasn't like, we're forming the Sinister Six, or we're in this world, so we're not going to do this. Those things didn't happen. They all kind of naturally fit into everything. Jamie Foxx was okay, but he had a really good moment in the movie too, which made me like the character. That's great. You did a good job. Sandman, the only thing that I was upset about Sandman, and Pat said the same thing, was that he was never human. He was always in his sand form. And you didn't see Thomas Hayden Church until he, the stuff happened towards the end of the movie, right? And I wish that had been there. And then you have, the Lizard, which the Lizard was fine, but he didn't have, like, the lab coat stuff. Like, I wanted him to have, like, the lab coat bottoms rather than being full Lizard. And Alfred Molina, again, great as Doc Ock. and I like the transition be the two types of characters they played, but you just, there is no fucking matching. No matching Willem Dafoe. And Willem Dafoe, again, is giving his all in this bit role that he's doing in this movie. And it's absolutely perfect. From him transitioning to Norman Osborn, from being the Green Goblin, to him coming back as the Green Goblin, everything is so good. And it's like, I want to see him in an MCU version being the Green Goblin so much. Or just give him another villain. Please give me a Willem Dafoe villain in a Spider-Man thing, or anywhere in the MCU. I will be fucking grateful if you were to do that. He's that good of an actor, man. And I know that this is a comic book movie, but villains make the whole thing, and you have a good set of villains, right? And you've got a relatively good story. Now, I saw one reviewer out there that said there's too much geek culture in it, and it does a lot to go nowhere. Actually, it does a lot and goes somewhere, in my opinion. I don't think it goes nowhere. I understand that you're kind of resetting everything at the end of the movie, but it's about the growth of the character, and I think aligning the way they've written Spider-Man to the way that Spider-Man kind of is to be. And the fact that you have Tom Holland, who's also aging, it allows Spider-Man to age at the same time. There's definitely character growth and him coming to the realization of what he needs to understand in being Spider-Man. And yes, the famous line is there in the movie. You'll have to see who says the whole thing. Also, there's a lot that moves in terms of the big MCU story. There isn't a whole lot that moves that story, if that's what you're talking about. If you're talking about just moving Spider-Man's story, there's a ton that happens with it, and it's character growth. If you're talking about the MCU, if you're expecting, well, where are we going in the MCU next? How do we get into this? We're going into the multiverse, right? And part of it does lead into that, and you see a lot of that with the interactions with Doctor Strange, and then you also see it a lot with the interactions towards the end of the movie when, he finally comes back into the picture. But there isn't enough to be like, okay, Kang the Conqueror, if that's going to be the big bad of everything, we've gotten more out of Loki than we've gotten out of this main MCU entry. We didn't get any also really in the Eternals, right? And we didn't really get any, we got some in Shang-Chi. That was introducing characters, getting Spider-Man to put us back on straight and doing something different with it to bring Spider-Man back into everything as something different. Whether we get another Tom Holland movie, which I've heard that we're possibly going to do, but we'll have to see about that all later. So, overall, there's a lot of other things I'd like to say, but I kind of want to leave a lot of that out so it's not like super spoilery, because I think I've kind of spoiled a couple things, but I've tried to keep away from like the meat of everything. The last fight is really good too, when we get all the Spider-Men together, and with everybody out there from all the different universes, and they're all fighting each other. I thought that was good. And there's some, there's some little things in between. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff in the background, and there's a lot of references that they make, and I really like some of them, and some of them I think I probably even missed myself. But my biggest thing, of course, was Venom. And it's weird that if we're bringing, because the reason that if you, again, I have to ruin the end, the very stinger of Let There Be Carnage. If you're bringing that Venom into this Spider-Man universe, it doesn't make any sense, because that Venom doesn't know that who Peter Parker is, and doesn't even, I don't even know if he knows a Peter Parker in his world, right? And if he does, and he doesn't necessarily know that he's Spider-Man, because when, he jumps over here, he's nowhere near where everybody else is. Everybody else gets basically transported as Spider-Man, but he doesn't. And it's kind of sad. But there is a really great Tobey Maguire joke about fighting aliens that I really enjoyed as well. So all in all, I think that this is a fantastic movie. I think that this is one of the higher echelon of Marvel movies that's out there. If you're going to put it in your top 10 of Marvel movies, for me, it's probably going to be somewhere in the 7 to 6 range up there for those Marvel movies. And I'm pretty sure that on the next episode of It Be Like That, we'll probably talk about that. So if you want to go in depth with Paranormal Pat, make sure to check out that podcast. So out of everything, I would give this 4 out of 5 Spider-Man. I think that it's very well done. It just misses being that 5 out of 5, because again, I do think it's a little bit long, and there's a couple of things. I agree that maybe it doesn't move the MCU forward, but it doesn't mean it's a bad movie. Also, the one review said that it's like has a lot of geek culture in it, and I don't see it. But again, I'm also kind of in it, so if I'm not attuned to the Marvel, cinematic universes or Spider-Man or the Marvel comics or whatever it is, I'm not going out there picking up my Spider-Man #1 and bringing it to the theater so I can watch the movie with my Spider-Man, which again is weird, and why would you bring a Spider-Man #1? I'm not sure, but nonetheless, it's not that. I think that if you are not attuned to the characters and you're not attuned to the Spider-Man movies, yeah, you're going to lose some, but this is the third movie in that franchise. It's not like you're going into it and thinking, I can just watch this as a standalone, because every movie is connected in some way, shape, or form. Doesn't matter what it is. I'm pretty sure there's going to be something that happens in like Thor, Love, and Thunder that's going to somehow come into this, because everything that's happening in this is also coming directly into, Doctor Strange 2. So it's kind of like I think Doctor Strange 2 is really where this next chapter of the MCU is going to start ramping up, and you're really going to see everything start to piece together. But really, all these movies have really stood alone for the most part, and there's just a little bit to link them together, or there's little things that get linked together from later things in the franchise, right? It's not sometimes immediate, sometimes it's much later. And we're kind of past the phase of really introducing characters, unless we're going to introduce somebody that you've never heard of before, like Shang-Chi, and you have to get accustomed to them, or the Eternals get accustomed to those characters, because they may be back later, which I think they're all going to be. So that's it for this little review. I don't think it was super terribly long. It might have been, but you know me, I'm fucking long-winded. If you haven't checked it out already, make sure you check out the latest episode of the Terrible Terror podcast. It's available on all podcasting platforms. Since it's the holidays, there is a review that was on Cadaver Christmas that was last week. From when this was released. I just released the Munsters, A Scary Little Christmas podcast with Dave. The last one was Patrick from Merry People Watch Movies. And then the podcast that's after that is going to be with Paranormal Pat. We're going to do one together, and we're doing A Nightmare Before Christmas, which is going to be a lot of fun. And I thought that this is kind of the right movie to do for this. And it's not a statement of whether or not it's a Christmas movie or not a Christmas movie. It's just that I'm going to do this movie. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you like the content that you see on the channel, make sure that you like and subscribe. Make sure that you share it if you do like it with other people that you know. It helps the channel get found. It helps all that stuff. And then I guess we'll have to see you next time on some little movie review that I do. So thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves and each other.